the Majority Report has long been one of the Breadtube giants, one of the big progressive media shows or outlets on the internet for a while now. For quite a few years, they've really been one of the kind of defining channels. They were big during the Bernie campaign and have maintained fairly relevant with Mr. Sam Seder, obviously holding down the show as its main host. And also a lot of prominence was brought to the Majority Report by its co-host, the late, great Michael Brooks, who we discussed on the show a lot, who was a big inspiration to us here at the Vanguard, as well as yourself, Mr. Kahmali Rose, if I'm correct. Personally, I used to enjoy the Majority Report because while I never fully agreed with Seder, I enjoyed watching the dynamic of him and Michael Brooks and Jamie Peck kind of bounce off one another. And I thought it was a good dynamic, right? It can get boring just listening to two people that always agree on the same thing, or even someone that agrees with you on 100% of the things. It can be boring to just listen to someone essentially regurgitate your own thoughts. So, I'm always someone that likes to hear out differing opinions. And that's why the Majority Report used to be in my media diet. Again, I've always been to the left of Sam Seder, more of a Michael Brooks or a Jamie Peck myself. But again, I enjoyed them backing or bouncing off one another and their dynamic. However, when Mr. Michael Brooks passed away, I really lost most reason to watch the Majority Report. Once it kind of just became the Sam Seder show with Nomiki Konst and I guess now Emma Vigeland doing the side gig, I really did lose interest, as again, I often find Sam Seder's opinions pretty intolerable. And especially since the passing of Michael Brooks, I feel like he's kind of veered in an even worse direction. I thought he had some terrible, cringy takes on Force the Vote, and his ignorance was really revealed in a great debate where Breonna Joy Gray essentially proved that he didn't really even know what he was talking about on the whole Force the Vote debate. Him regurgitating this talking point that voting no against Pelosi would then incur the speakership of Republican Kevin McCarthy, which essentially was not true, never was going to happen in the first place. It was all just horseshit. So again, my opinion of Sam Seder has been on a pretty steady decline for the last couple of years. And now there is officially no reason to watch the Majority Report anymore because Jamie Peck, the only other tolerable voice on the panel, and in fact a communist indeed, has been removed from the show. It's not clear whether this split was entirely amicable. It's not entirely sure if it was her decision to leave or if Sam asked her to leave. Maybe he's trying to go in a more corporate friendly, MSNBC friendly direction. That's entirely possible, to want to excise the only truly leftist voice on the program anymore, in my opinion, at least. So again, no reason to watch the Majority Report anymore. If you were still watching, Jamie was really the voice of reason on there. And also another reason I had stopped watching the Majority Report a while back, and I'm interested to see if you observed this too, Kahmali. But I always thought that Sam Seder was terribly abusive, if not downright sexist in his treatment of Jamie Peck, often being very abrasive, talking over her.
Like how he treated Breonna Joy Gray the other day.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it was a feature of his show. Just watching him and whoever else was on kind of just talk over, belittle Jamie. It really was downright abusive, in my opinion. Obviously not literally, but I certainly wouldn't want to be on a show on a daily basis where I couldn't even get through my own thoughts and say what I wanted to say, say my piece on a particular subject matter without being barreled over by some loudmouth asshole. So, I really did feel for her, and I really do want to congratulate her too for moving on from.
Gavin knows what it's like to spend every day being talked over by a loudmouth asshole.
Trust me, Zach, you're nowhere near as disrespectful and as condescending as Sam Seder was to Jamie, and I really did feel for her. I don't know how she put up with it for as long as she did. I'm really glad that she will be moving on to new things. Again, we're not really entirely sure if this was her decision or his, but I'm really glad and looking forward to seeing what comes next. Kahmali, did you have any experience watching the Majority Report? Do you have a similar experience that I did, or what's your context on this whole matter?
Yeah, I would say I had a similar experience with Majority Report. I think it came into my sort of political news diet pretty early on in once I tapped into like progressive media, TYT, Majority Report followed shortly after. I think that when I first started watching, I was more sort of still figuring out my political identity and realizing, how far to the left I actually was. And so over that time, I think that initially, I took a liking to to Sam Seder initially, you know, just sort of, you know, I mean, it was an interesting, but the more that I watched the show, the more I started to realize that what I was really there for was watching Michael Brooks. He was sort of, his takes really resonated with me more. And then over time, it was really that I slowly realized that, you know, if Michael Brooks wasn't on, I didn't have a reason to watch. And so I in my like intro video on my channel, actually, for like my welcome video on my channel, like when I did my first video to like start this channel up, I mentioned like a list of people that I'm just like, you know, I just want to add my voice to this like chorus of left voices that are already there. And in it, I mentioned, you know, Michael Brooks, and when I get around, I'm like, yeah, and like I guess Sam Seder, but yeah, not really feeling Sam Seder, but I love Jamie Peck, you know, and so I note that in that thing. It's like Jamie was always always stood out to me as I value her opinion. I saw the same thing from that you saw from Sam. Sam, clearly he had a sort of, it was almost a contempt, a disdain, just a lack of respect for her in some ways. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've all seen there's a few famous sort of like, or, you know, just like, you know, infamous sort of clips of Sam Seder just like going off in a really disrespectful way. And even when he came back in the apology that he gave, it was just like, listen, man, you were like, Jamie was right on the underlying, on the substance. She was right on the you know, just the semantics of it and the way that you approach it was really disrespectful. And I just never felt like he really reckon with that, or, you know, and honestly, we know where Sam sits. You know, I mean, he's an MSNBC guest, you know, a guest host on Chris Hayes' show. He's definitely, you know, he's on the left for sure, but we know he's just, you know, he's much closer to the center than we are. And I just think that you know, with
he seems like the kind of guy who would really happily vote for Elizabeth Warren to me at this point.
Yeah, that would push that, and you know, like you know, just to sort of be okay.
I'm not as familiar with him.
He kind of played that like
endorsed Bernie, but
no, but he did play the like, oh, but you know, trying to like say they're kind of two peas in a pod, and oh, you know, if he gets one or the other, it'll be just as, you know, just as good. And he, because
kind of like the technocratic thing.
Absolutely. You know, the sort of technocratic, idealism in that sort of approach, and honestly, it's just his. You know what he's doing there. I think that once Michael Brooks left, and then Nomiki Konst and Emma Vigeland started to appear more on the show. Emma Vigeland's from TYT. For folks that aren't familiar with her, she did Rebel HQ on TYT. She did some investigative journalism on TYT, and then and slowly started to make more appearances on the Majority Report, which, as I understand, is under the sort of TYT umbrella. I believe Majority Report is. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that they were a part of the TYT network.
Actually, at this point, I do not think they are anymore. And in fact, they might.
Okay.
I think they actually might literally be connected to MSNBC in some respect. I was told by someone that you can even watch it on like Peacock, which is the MSNBC app. Wow. So yeah,
let me fact check that really quick.
Yeah, fact check.
Yeah. So
sure. I think that might not be correct, but certainly MSNBC.
Oh yeah, shit. The Majority Report with Sam Seder on Peacock.
Oh wow, yeah, wow. So yeah,
that's some Mehdi Hassan shit.
Yeah. Like it's really scary. What's happening with what we're seeing with sort of progressive left media that we thought was, and this is why we got to take stock of this and realize that these people were well-intentioned people to begin with. You know, I don't doubt that Jank and these, you know, were well-intentioned, believe that they were, but you know, they have Jank is an avowed capitalist.
I don't know. I'm going to push back on that. Jank has as pure motivation, just because every single time I've heard Jank, and I remember listening to Jank like on the Joe Rogan podcast. Okay. Like, and this dude was still like, this is before, you know, they're $20 million. He's like, hey, from a business marketing perspective, he's like, I want the progressive media market. Why would I be out here telling people to eat into my market share? I'm like, bro, that is a red flag from me from jump. That says capitalist. That says grifter. That says this. Lick my finger and tell me what the fuck I need to say. I'm trying to commodify.
Well, it's true that Jank is a good example of the fact that even in this Breadtube space, even in the online leftist, progressive, whatever you want to call it, media sphere, a lot of the prominent hosts are capitalists. There's no denying it, and that's actually what makes it even more unfortunate. Well, not unfortunate, because again, I actually am glad that she won't have to put up with the stupidity and abuse of Sam Seder anymore. But it is unfortunate that one of the largest platform shows has now lost a communist voice, because now, again, it will just be Emma Vigeland, Nomiki Konst, and Sam Seder, essentially, none of whom really reflect my politics. I don't think reflect a real socialist, communist like worldview. So I guess that's the only thing that sucks about this.
We only have Tucker Carlson now.
Is that now?
Oh yeah.
Those many people, because the show does have a large following. Those many people won't be exposed to the communist worldview and beliefs of Jamie Peck. And again, she is a based lefty, someone that's a great Twitter follow. I've always really enjoyed her commentary, and always just wish she had more time to actually say her piece and speak on the Majority Report when she was on it. Again, she was the last and best thing about the show before now, and of course she's now off the show. I did want to throw these tweets up too, because I thought this was interesting. One sec. Here we go. Oh shit. One sec, guys. Let me get these tweets up real quick. There's some tweets that she essentially liked that were, here we go. One sec. I got this. Yeah. Okay. So someone replied to this Twitter thread that I just had up on screen and said he just realized, referring to Sam Seder, that he doesn't want a radical on his show because he is fundamentally an MSNBC shit lib, true, or at least doesn't mind playing one on TV and YouTube for money. Sam Seder is not in it for the people, LOL. Obviously, that's something that I agree with. But given the fact that, at least on a surface level, Jamie's exit was amicable, it makes it interesting, the fact that she actually liked this tweet. She later unliked it, but you can see here that it was one of the original people that liked this tweet, totally trashing Sam Seder, totally calling him out for being an MSNBC shit lib. So you could see this as Jamie not wanting to explicitly come out and trash Sam Seder. But for those of us that are investigators, for those of us that are really spending too much time on Twitter, she did drop a little bit of a hint here in the form of this that she agrees that Sam Seder is a disgusting shit lib piece of garbage.
Yeah, I think that's really telling right there, and I think that says it all. I do believe it sounds to me like this was not an amicable split for sure. I mean, I could just I don't think that you would. I don't think there's a reason for her to try to give up that platform. She's not going to. It's not going to be an easy thing for her to make up. I mean, I think they have like over 800,000 subscribers on YouTube. They've obviously got this deal with NBC now. That's that it's a hit for the left. I think we have to reckon with that as well. That's a voice on the left, a true left voice that just got deplatformed, and it certainly the left takes a hit there, because she was a strong voice and did hold a strong left-wing ideology. And so this is I don't think that we should be all that surprised from seeing the direction. I don't know about y'all. I don't think I've watched more than 20 minutes of Majority Report since Michael Brooks has passed. I just don't. I don't think I watched the Sam Seder, Brianna Joy Gray debate, and was embarrassed for Sam Seder.
Ass whooping.
The
whooping of the year so far.
I mean, it was. I felt bad. I wanted to, send flowers to his mom, and and he went on afterward and feigned this Brianna, Brie was just so rude, and it was this kind of honestly, I don't know how it's not seen as a sort of misogynoir, it's the angry black woman and she just wouldn't let me talk. And if you actually watch the thing,
it was obvious.
She kept saying over and over and over in it. She was like, can I just finish my sentence, Sam? Can I just get a chance? If you could just let me finish my sentence,
Yeah, literally the way he described his treatment was the way he treated Jamie for years, day after day, literally talking over her, shouting over her, the verbal equivalent of manhandling, I guess I would say, just being a total dick, a total fucking loser. Again, it really started to piss me off. Like the first couple times I was like, damn, this guy just must be passionate. Like Zach said, sometimes he gets pretty animated too on the show. It happens. Obviously we all get passionate about what we're talking about. But when you watch the Majority Report on a daily or weekly basis, you would notice that this was a recurring theme. And weirdly, he never really seemed to address Nomiki Konst that way or other female guests. It was he had this certain disdain for Jamie, and usually when she was making really base leftist points and kind of making him look stupid. So it's that classic, like triggered, toxic masculinity, where you can't handle losing an argument, where you can't handle being criticized. It's the most classic shit you've ever seen. Like, it's so obvious what was going on. And I honestly can't believe that more of his fans never called it out, because I was just like disgusted by it.
Yeah, no, and it honestly, does it surprise you though with sort of like folks that are in that vein? They're sort of the things that they talk about. It's really it's often so performative to me. It's like, if you see look what's going on with Biden and Tara Reid, or Cuomo and these all these women that he's harassing. Whenever it's somebody on their team, they all of a sudden like lose sight over where's our print? Like they're not holding a principal position and sticking to it, right? Because to be principled, to hold a principle means that even if it's somebody that's on my team, I can still recognize that behavior and call out, even if when it's me sometimes doing it. It's like to have the ability to self-reflect and to look back and be like, no, this wasn't, so it really doesn't surprise me with the sort of, I really do think that Sam Seder attracts a sort of more centrist.
Yeah, I think it's so critical, right? Gavin and I talk about that all the time, right? How it's imperative that you have, one, self-reflection, but two, just that you're able to get through like pushback. And this kind of goes back to the Sam Seder thing a little bit. Just like, if you are unable, and we talk about this all the time, if you're unable to handle any kind of pushback with people who disagree with you without kind of like fundamentally breaking down and just falling into hysterics, like, it's so ridiculous. Like, if you actually believe what the fuck you're saying, then you also remember that at one time you had questions and you fucking sought the answer for them and somebody told you. And of course, you may have never approached it as a skeptic, just as somebody who was maybe ignorant of the situation and unaware, but we all come from a place where we did not know something, right? So why can you not just calmly say, oh, why does we'll get people who are like, oh, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? And Gavin and I, we have like 1,000 answers for that question. Do you want to hear about how it's going to be cheaper anyway? Do you want to hear about how the fact that we're happy to take as much as it costs from the military budget? We're happy to tax the rich to get it done. We've got options here on the left. We're open. We're reasonable people, right? And I think that kind of reflection is important, but I also think it's totally lacking, right? Because we see people who are just like viciously unable to, apply their logic equitably, right? So